welcome to the Bible Geek Squad. So I was asked a couple of questions of why I'm so crazy about the NLT, and so here are the answers that I gave my good friend. Check it out. Well, a couple of years ago, when I first started in ministry, the NLT, I wasn't even aware of the NLT, to be honest with you. My dad bought me a Reina Valera 1960. It's a Spanish translation that's equivalent to the New King James. That Spanish was my first language, but I struggled a lot in Spanish. So my dad wanted me, I was in a Spanish church with my dad. My dad was a pastor. He served the Lord for over 50 years all over Mexico. He came to the States. He helped a lot of people here in Texas, a lot of pastors here in Texas, and a couple of other states. And so it was an amazing time, But when he settled down here in the Valley, when he opened up the church, it was a Spanish church. And so he gave me, when I gave my life to the Lord in 2008, he bought me a small thin line Spanish Bible, basically kind of like this little one right here, but except that one was black. And it was a Reina Valera. I struggled a lot with it, and so as I made my transition into English Bible, because I needed something that I could understand, right? Reina Valera was a little difficult for me to understand, especially because I struggled in Spanish. As everything I learned everything in English, I got the NIV, and that was my primary translation. I struggled with certain things to understand certain things, even though the NIV is actually pretty simple to understand, But one day, I go into this Bible bookstore, and I saw this paperback said the NLT, the Truth Made Clear. And I was like, let me get it, why not? I already have my NIV, and I think it was in a black genuine leather. So I got me that paperback, it doesn't hurt. I think it was like $5.49 for it. I got it, and I went home. I started reading through it, man, and I was just blown away. As if the NIV wasn't easy to understand, the NLT just took it to another level. It was so much clearer. And I did have a New King James Bible that my wife gave me. That was her Bible. And so I would read through it, and I compared it, the New King James, I compared the NIV, and then I saw the NLT, and I was just blown away by the clarity of the New Living Translation. I was just like, this is nice. And I think that it was a 2007 edition, because it originally came out in 1996. There was a revision in 2004, 2007, 2013, and 2015, which is the latest update that we have to date. And I hope that it stays like that for a while longer, But anyways, so that's when I started to fall in love with the NLT. I would reach more for my paperback edition of the NLT than my NIV now. And I figured it's time to upgrade from a paperback to a true tone, to a genuine leather, something, better. And so as I went to the store, I was walking around, I found I got a New Living Translation Life Application study Bible, personal size. It was teal and brown. I don't have that Bible with me because I gave it to somebody. But at that first point, that right there, my friend, was the first time ever I got discouraged. I got discouraged because somebody, the owner of that store, just happened. It was a different store, but the owner of that store happened to be a pastor, and his wife was the one that ran the store, right? And she saw me, and she saw that by this point I was already preaching, sharing my testimony, and stuff like that. So I was considered a preacher, and she came up to me, and she saw me having that that Life Application study Bible, and she tells me, you don't need that. And I was like, why not? She was like, because you're a preacher. A preacher or a pastor does not need NLT. That's just for kids. That's just for beginners, or for people that don't know the English language too well. I'm like, wow, the audacity of that lady. Now I know that a couple of years ago I did my testimony on this, and I did not include that, But yes, that was very, very, very real, and it was very discouraging, because that was the very first time somebody bullied me because of my choice of reading the NLT. I loved it, And so I told her, you know what? That's fine. I'm still taking it because it's for me. I need this. And so as I was walking out, I looked over to the Spanish section, and guess what? I saw the logo, I saw the picture, the logo of the NLT, but it wasn't the NLT, it was the NTV. And I'm like, wait a minute. But then I saw that it didn't say Holy Bible, I read Santa Biblia. No way. No way, like no. So I went up to it, I got the Bible, I opened it up, and sure enough, it was the New Living Translation, but in Spanish, the Nueva Traducción Viviente. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is perfect. This is perfect. So I ended up getting that. I got those two Bibles. I got those two, and I was so excited, brother, man. I was so excited because keep in mind that my dad's church was in Spanish, and so I always took my English Bible, and whenever I would preach from the Reina Valera. It just made it a little hard for me. But now I have the Nueva Traducción Viviente. Now I have the NLT, and I'm stoked about it. I'm just like, I can preach from this, and I started preaching from that translation. I don't have it here with me, so I can show it to you. But it was just life changing for me to be able to better understand the scriptures. Just meant everything to me. What made me fall in love with the NLT was the clarity of it. Again, using the NKJV or the New King James or the NIV, comparing it to the NLT. I didn't have to do a lot of research. I mean, at the beginning, as I became ordained and as I became a pastor, there was work that I had to do in order to better understand a passage. And I always heard from people, use several translations. By this point in life, I have the New American Standard, I have the English Standard Version, I have the New King James, I have the NIV, the NLT, I have the Amplified Version, which I wasn't really the biggest fan of, but I used it. I had a KJV, which just sat on my shelf, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, I had several translations, and I had several commentary books. I had several study Bibles, and that's a different story, which I'll be more than happy to share with you one of these days. The lessons that I learned from choosing a study Bible. But anyways, I had all these translations, and the translations that I always ran to was the NLT because of its clarity. I fell in love with it, and it was just an amazing experience. As a pastor, I had to do a lot of word research, so I had my Strong's Concordance, my Vine's Dictionary, and the funny thing about that, man, is that and the NLT gets a lot of bash from people, and I've been a big advocate of this, and I've tried to push it, I've tried to push the NLT on people in the sense of give it a chance, because I've met a lot of people that are very, very no, we need a very, very literal translation. We need this and we need that, and the NLT does not do that. And I'm like, oh, you're wrong, my friend. You're wrong. Why? Because the NLT tends to be more literal in areas of the Bible where the NASB, where the ESV tend to be very, very loose on these same passages. A lot of people that I've met over the years that have adapted to the NLT, as many of them have taken the NLT and that's become their primary translations. People that had an NASB or the ESV even, that's very popular amongst the reformers, the NLT has become their primary translation. And a lot of these people have told me, the reason that they've done that is because of its clarity and how faithful it is. You see, because there's a lot of people out there, that have just come into this little box of theirs, and it could only be a literal translation. The ESV forever, the KJV forever, the New King James forever, the NASB forever, and that's it. The heck with the NIV or the NLT. Oh my goodness, the NLT is a paraphrase. Listen, the NLT was designed by 90 different scholars that came together and they translated to the best of their ability something that would be faithful to the original languages, at the same time clear for today's generation. I highly doubt that it took 90 different scholars to form a paraphrase. You want to paraphrase, then look up the Living Bible, which I think it was back in the 70s when that one came out. You want a paraphrase, look up the Message translation, and that's a paraphrase. The New Living Translation is far from being a paraphrase, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, the NLT it's amazing, because after I would do a lot of the work, let me go back, because after I would do a lot of the work when it came to, you know, the Strongs, learning a little bit of the Hebrew and the Greek to better understand the passage, I would open up my NLT Bible, and guess what? The answer was already there. I'm just like, all that work, when all I had to do was just open up my New Living Translation, and the answer was there. Like, what in the world, man? You know, and I mean, and I'm not saying, hey, don't ever do all the work that you need to. Of course, you're going to learn so many more things as you do the work, as you go through the process. But the NLT just made it so simple for me to understand. There are things in the ESV that sometimes throw me off, like in Revelation chapter 3, where it says, would that you were hot or cold. You know, would that you were hot or cold. And they say that the NASB sounds wooden. The ESV sounds more wooden than anything, if I'm being honest with you. And this is not to bash the ESV. I love the ESV. The ESV is my third translation that I run to all the time. But yeah, it can sound very woody, you know, the ESV does. And so when I look at the NLT or even the NIV, that I've been I started off with the NIV, I pushed it to the side, the NLT took its place, then the NASB came into my life, and then I pushed the NIV further, and the ESV came into my life, and you know, but currently I've been just digging back into the first translation that I fell in love with, which was the NIV. I have right now my NLT and the NIV. Those are the two translations that I've been just using. They're just amazing translations that God has used, you know, to help so many people better understand the scriptures. But I get it. Right now we're talking about the NLT. And again, I encourage so many people, man. I do encourage a lot of people to take the time, because there's a lot of naysayers on the NLT who have yet to actually open up an NLT and read the whole Bible in the NLT. You know, I have a friend, his name, and I'm going to give a huge shout out. Casey, if you're watching this, we've been going back and forth. And there was a time where I wanted to walk away from the NLT, make the CSB my main translation. And I tried it out for I think that lasted 2 weeks maybe, before I came back to the NLT. I just couldn't do it. I stuck with my NLT. But he messaged me earlier on, he messaged me in that time frame, says like, bro, I just started digging into the NLT. Why do you want to leave the NLT? Oh my goodness, I had never really paid so much attention to it, and it's just grabbed my attention. And I'm like, I know, right? Like, I got pumped up, man. I got excited over that. Because, like, dude, when people actually step back and stop listening to everybody saying, oh, the NLT is just a paraphrase. The NLT is just a good, a footnote. The NLT is just a good resource that you can use for your actual primary translation. It's great, it's nice, but it could never be your primary translation. You could never study off your primary, the NLT as your primary translation. And I call that baloney. All right, baloney. That's just a bunch of malarkey, because the NLT does a fantastic job. A fantastic job. There's a lot of people, a lot of scholars, theologians that have gone into this, man, and they've done an amazing job. And you can compare it to the original language if you want to. If you're a Hebrew student, I challenge you to go into the Hebrew, to go into the Greek, and check this out for yourself, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about. The NLT has become, again, the translation of my choice. I love it with all of my heart. I really do. And I'm grateful to the Lord and to the different men and the men and women that went into this translation, that helped translate it, making sure that it would be faithful to the original language, but at the same time very clear for people like me and for many other people, or just, in general, just to make something more simple. On Facebook, on social media, I'm continuously seeing people moving from their main literal translation, and they're moving more into an NLT or even the NIV. And to me, that is awesome, man, because I get messages all the time like, hey, man, you are the reason that I moved to the NLT. Hey, man, I got my first NLT because I saw your video. That's awesome. You know, that is awesome. If you prefer the NASB, I ain't gonna belittle you. I ain't gonna tell you stuff. I mean, I can easily go and find the passages where the NLT is 100% more accurate than the NASB or the ESV, and you won't hear me belittle you people because of that. I wouldn't do that, you know, because I have respect and I love my brothers and sisters in Christ, and it is a dumb thing to divide over a Bible translation. Now, I understand that I would never use the Message translation as my primary Bible because it's a paraphrase. That I understand. But something like the New Living Translation or even the NIV, these two translations, in my opinion, are the perfect balance of clarity, but at the same time, very faithful to the original languages that we have. All right, so I would encourage people to go and get an NLT. If you have never read the New Living Translation, then my encouragement would be go get one. Go get the NLT. It's going to be super simple to understand, but at the same time, very faithful. And I know that I've been saying this throughout this little interview. I've been saying that quite a bit, but that's really what I can say, man. It's faithful to the original languages, but at the same time, so much clarity, so much. Even some of these, you know, very big words or even keywords like propitiation or justification or redemption. You know, justification, propitiation, it will be a word that you will not see in the NLT, but it gives you the definition of it. You know, and so that's pretty cool, man. I really do enjoy that, and I really do like that. Another thing would be, if you have never read the NLT, before you make a judgment call on it, before you judge something that you don't even know, do yourself a favor, order yourself an NLT, a thin line. Just order yourself a thin line. Go check out the new editions, the filament, that's what I would recommend. Get a large print filament. It's got better paper than some of their original work. Get something like that because it's also a study Bible. It's gonna have this little cool like diamond thingy on top of the number of in the page. Sorry. And when you look into that, you scan it with your phone, all these study notes come out, these videos, devotions, like there's different categories that help you better understand the Bible, the passage that you're reading. It tells you the context, the historical context. It blows your mind what Tendo is doing with the Filament Edition, and I look forward to them. I actually have these right here, the Holy Bible New Living Translation Filament White Margin Editions that I have, and these are pretty cool, man. Like, you need to get yourself some of these. If you're watching, I encourage you, get a Filament White Margin or a Filament Thin Line or Filament Large Print Thin Line. You can't go wrong with these, man. They're awesome. So again, shout out to Tyndale for these editions that they're making. I'm actually doing a review on these. You already know I was sick for like the last month. I'm backed up on some of the Bibles that I was sent to review. So I'm gonna do some of these. I'm gonna do a review on these next. So check out the video on that. That will be coming out maybe later on this week. But yeah, if you've never read the NLT, give it a chance. Don't judge it before you criticize it. Like, oh no, I would never get the NLT. Check it out. Read it, man. Trust me, you're going to love it. Yeah, those were some of the questions that I gave just about an hour ago. So, yeah, man, if you guys have not checked out the Filament Editions, I recommend it. If you haven't read the NLT, read it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you in my next one.